Marijuana in the US is not legal federally, but it is legal in certain states. And much like alcohol, there is a potential for abuse. So now there is this idea out there that marijuana should not be a Schedule 1 drug because it's totally harmless. And we want to be able to study the effects, good or bad, of marijuana and have federal funding to do so. So now I was reading an article about the implications of marijuana. There's a misconception that it is actually harmless, so people are using it recreationally. Well, what we know for sure, just like with alcohol, caffeine, vaping, and all that kind of stuff, the implications of those types of drugs are actually more damaging. Like people under 23 and stuff like that, because your brain is not fully developed yet. It's definitely more harmful. So it has been found that there is a higher risk of developing schizophrenia, of getting psychoses in the future. But let's talk about the biblical perspective. Well, what is the problem in terms of alcohol? That's the simplest thing because it's very straightforward. It was there, right? That was something that people took advantage of. The problem with alcohol is the fact that you can abuse it and you can harm people when you've abused it. You can harm yourself when you've abused it. So the drunkenness is the problem with alcohol. Some Christians believe that drinking alcohol is a sin. It should not be done. And they can very well say, well, the wine of Jesus' times is not the same as the wine of today, and how they fermented it and all that kind of stuff. Different processes, different kinds of results. So, for this day and age, people should not be consuming alcohol as Christians. What we know for sure is that Christians are advised to actually drink alcohol in moderation if they are going to consume it. Meaning that you should not drink alcohol so much that you will do something you regret in the future. Like it clouds your judgment. So basically being so drunk that you pass out or you do something silly because your inhibition's all the way down and you're not thinking clearly. And if you're going to say, well, I just drink a glass for dinner every day and all these kinds of things, biblically speaking, that is fine. So as long as you are not abusing it and having it affect your actions. So now, if we're gonna think about marijuana in the same lens of alcohol from a biblical point of view, then I would say, well, there is a potential for you to abuse and get addicted to marijuana, just as the same as drinking alcohol. What do you do when you're on it? Are you harming yourself or are you harming others? You're driving while high or drunk? Well, that's harmful. So marijuana, I've learned when I looked into it, trying to reconcile this for myself since I'm in the medical field, is that if you ingest it, you ate some pot cookies, it's more effective for your pain than if you smoked it. And if you smoked it, then you have the psychedelic psychotic effects. But there are some people who say, oh, they like the psychedelic effect because it actually gets them so spaced out that they forget about their pain. So maybe if you just want to be pain-free, it's better for you to actually just ingest it as opposed to smoking it. And of course, if we smoke anything, we're introducing lung cancer into our lives because, carcinogens today, tomorrow for our loved ones. Funny thing is, if you smoke all your life, you could very well not get lung cancer, but then people around you could very well get lung cancer because of secondhand smoke. And also, if you're a smoker and you have to undergo surgery, your wounds might not heal. It also applies if you're exposed to secondhand smoke. So if somebody in your family or anywhere around you and you smoke and they're undergoing surgery, please, for their sake, do not smoke around them because secondhand smoke could very well mess with their wound healing. And if they get an infection, you might be the one to blame for it. So, something to consider. So if you're the type of person, well, I'm just using it for medicinal purposes because it helps me think clearly, it helps me stabilize my mood because I'm bipolar or depressed, it helps me not think about my pain, it helps me with pain relief, it helps me all these things. So, sure. If it improves your life, get you back to baseline, great. But if we're saying healthy people who are just smoking for fun because, it helps me decompress, it helps me chill out, it helps me be more creative. It's kind of introducing something harmful into your body that you don't have to. That's how I feel about coffee. That's how I feel about alcohol and all these things. It doesn't really add value to your life. You're just doing it because you like it and you want to. If it affects you negatively, where you have to smoke pot before you actually be able to do something productive with your life, right? Or you have to use pot to decompress every single day, and you find yourself being really dependent upon it. Like if you don't smoke or consume marijuana, then something happens to you. You're not 100% yourself. Then it might be time to think about the implications of addiction in your life. It's the same thing as consuming caffeine and coffee. You know, if you don't understand what addictive behavior is, another way of thinking about it is if you drink coffee and one day you have no access to your coffee and you start to shake and you can't think clearly, you start to have cold sweat, and that's withdrawal symptoms. So that's basically you're having the same symptoms as a drug addict would have. If you're using it for medicinal purposes, then great. It's adding value. It's getting you up to your baseline of when you were functioning prior to your diagnosis. So now people who are just using it recreationally, you're putting yourself at a higher risk. These are things that you have to consider in everything that you do. Because even if it just puts you at a higher risk, would it really deter you from doing it if it makes you feel good right now? You can always find some study somewhere, obscure or not, how there's a benefit of some sort to justify your behavior, right? Like if you love chocolate and there's some studies going to say, oh, it's bad for you. Some studies are going to say it's great for you. So which one are you going to listen to? Whichever that is going to support the fact that you love chocolate and you want to eat it every day. Right? So it's basically like that for every little thing that we do here. So that's why we have to like think critically about the research. But let's not pretend like it is not harmful.